Hi, welcome to my video on subtracting polynomials by the vertical method. The previous video had subtracting with the horizontal method, only I didn't call it the horizontal method. So let's practice this vertical method as we did in addition. Vertical means above and below each other. Horizontal means sideways. The vertical method in subtracting, as we subtract numbers, would be one above the other. 6 subtract 4 is 2. 7 subtract 1 is 6, 9 subtract 3 is 3, and 4 subtract 2 is 2. So notice, this is the vertical method, one above the other. 1 subtract 1 is 0, 5 subtract 3 is 2, 7 subtract 6 is 1. What I have now is the horizontal method in subtracting and the vertical method in subtracting. So let's practice both. You're used to this one because you have a 4x plus 6, and when you subtract you add on the opposite, so that's a negative x minus 2. That's a plus, make it a minus, that's a plus, make it a minus. And then we group our like terms. And when we group our like terms, x's together, constants together, we don't change the signs. 4 subtract 1, that's a 1 understood, put it there for you. And there's a 3x plus 4. And we'll add this one, x squared minus 7x minus 3. When I'm subtracting, I add on the opposite, which is negative 2x minus 1. So notice that's a plus, make it a minus, that's a plus, make it a minus. And we group our like terms, x squared minus 7x minus 2x minus 3 minus 1. When we group these together, we don't change. And we add up the like terms, x squared, negative 7, negative 2, negative 9x. Or that's subtract 7, subtract 2, subtract 9, same thing. And that's a negative 4. Done. Now the vertical method on this would be to write down the 4x plus 6 and write down x plus 2 below it and put a subtraction sign there. Now, if I had this, if I covered all this in and just gave you this and said subtracted, what you do, that's a plus, so you change your sign to a minus. And you change the plus to a minus. So the circle here is indicating that this plus has changed. So the circle is the sign you got to deal with, what's inside the circle. So that's a positive 4 and a negative 1, so that's a 3. And that's a positive 6, negative 2, so that's a positive 4. So putting this circle in reminds you that you change the sign because you're subtracting. And b, x squared minus 7x minus 3. And you're going to subtract, 2x plus 1. That's a little bit of waiting there for a second, and just not to make it confusing too much. And it's gone. Anyway, here we go. And draw a line. So notice I put it down below. Now I'm changing. I'm subtracting, so I'll make that a minus, and I'll make that one a minus. So that's really negative 3 subtract 1 is negative 4. Negative 7, negative 3 and negative 1 is negative 4. Negative 7, negative 2 is a negative 9. And we have 0 here, so that's just an x squared because that's 1 subtract 0, which is just the number. And we have the same answer. This is horizontal, that's vertical. Most of the time, in math, you work the horizontal method. I'm just doing the vertical as an extra, because you'll see it again later. Notice now I have this one. We're subtracting these, and I'm doing the vertical method. So it's 7x plus 8. Subtract this, so there's the subtraction, and there's the 2x plus 3 written out on the side. So we're subtracting, so that's a plus, we make it a minus. That's a plus, we make it a minus. So that's positive 8, negative 3 is a positive 5. Positive 7, subtract 2 is 5x. And notice we have 4x squared plus 6x minus 5 there, and we're subtracting this trinomial, so I wrote it down like terms under like terms. Now I'm subtracting. That's a plus, so I'll make it a minus. Watch. That's a minus. Now I'll make it a plus. That's a plus, so I'll make it a minus. So really, these signs right here, because you're doing it this way, you can forget about that negative and forget about that positive because you added on the opposite. So positive 4 and a negative 1 is 3. Positive 6, positive 1 is plus 7. Negative 5, negative 1, negative 6. So you change the sign, so now you're dealing with a negative 5, subtract 1. You're dealing with a positive 6, add on 1. So you're changing the sign, so you're ignoring, you're only looking at the sign that's in the bracket. And now, I'm just reversing it. If you have this trinomial subtracting this trinomial, well, that's the same as if you wrote down that one minus that. So I just reversed it. That's all. Normally, you don't go around doing this. You don't reverse these. You either have a vertical method or a horizontal method. It's your choice, but you don't have to do both, as long as you get it right. And if you want to do the vertical method here, then we can work this out. So that's a positive, so we'll make it a minus because we're subtracting. That's a minus, so we'll make it a plus 4. And that's a plus, we'll make it a minus 9. So again, that minus is gone, that plus is gone. So negative 3 subtract 2 is negative 5. Negative 8 plus 4 is negative 4a. Positive 2 minus 9 minus 7. And just for practice, let's do the horizontal method, which is the way we'll go most of the time. When we subtract, we add on the opposite. So that's a negative 2a squared. Positive 4a, subtract 9. So notice when you subtract, you make that a negative, you make that a positive, you make that a negative. Now you group the like terms. And a little here, that's an A there. That's an A there. Sorry about that. That's an A. Well, I got all A's over here. I could have the x squared there, but it would be out of whack because I wouldn't be able to line them up. And we group the like terms, squares, and the A's, and the constants. I group the like terms together, and when I move them, I don't change. So that's a negative 5a squared. That's a negative 4a, and that's a negative 7. Did I get the same answer? Yes, it's your choice. But most of the time in math, this is the way to go. And we have subtraction here. So we're doing the vertical method. So we're subtracting. We're doing the 3x cubed. We have no x, so we'll leave it out. And we have a plus 1. So notice there's no x squared here. So as I'm writing these down by the vertical method, I can leave that blank. I'm subtracting, so I'll make that a minus 3. Make that a plus 4. And make that a minus. So that plus and minus is gone because I'm adding on the opposite. So that's 1 subtract 3 is negative 2. 6 plus 4 is 10. Just takes a while to get used to, and I don't know if your teacher and your textbook or whatever did the vertical method with you, but when I teach, I make sure I cover all my bases and cover everything. Make sure you understand what you're doing. Here we go. We're subtracting by the vertical method. And again, you could do the horizontal method here just as quick. So 8x plus 10, and we're subtracting to 2x plus 7. Draw a line, and because we're subtracting, we make that a negative because that's a plus there. And that's a plus, we'll make it a minus. And now we're ignoring the bottom signs because we added on the opposite. So positive 8, negative 2 is 6x. Positive 10 subtract 7 is a plus 3. And 9x plus 3 subtract negative 5x minus 1. Notice we're putting like terms underneath each other. The subtraction sign is that one right there. Is right there. We wrote down the same thing. Now we're subtracting, so we make that a plus 5. Ignore that. As a minus 1, so we make it a plus 1, so we ignore that. Notice I'm crossing it out. And negative 9 plus 5 is a negative 4. And 3 plus 1 is 4. So once the signs are changed and you cross them out, then you're dealing with the negative 9 plus 5 and the plus 1 because you're adding on the opposite. And x squared minus 6x minus 4, and we're subtracting this trinomial, and we line them up. X squared minus 9x plus 10. Put like terms under like terms. So draw a line, and because we're subtracting, we'll make that plus a minus. Put the plus there. We make that minus a plus, so we cross that out. We make that plus a minus, we cross that out. So we're dealing with a positive 1 and a negative 1, so they cancel out. In other words, if you look at it, if you had an x squared and then an x squared below it, and you were subtracting here, then they would cancel out because they're the same. Like 10 subtract 10 is 0. Negative 6 plus 9 is a 3x, and a negative 4, negative 10, negative 14. So again, that's a negative 10 because we added on the opposite. Number 4, descending order is already there because it's an x squared, an x, and a constant. We're going to subtract. We're going to go negative 8x squared, and we have no x, so we just move over. We leave a gap here. So notice the vertical method is okay in that we don't have to write everything out and do line them all up and, as in horizontal. But the horizontal method, adding on the opposite, is done in math as you go higher. And we're subtracting, so we make that. I could do a plus right here now like that, but there's a reason why I'm going to put the plus in here for later on. And when I'm subtracting, so I make that a minus. So I scratch out the plus and scratch out the minus, gone. So negative 10 plus 8 is negative 2. And that's a 0, so you just bring it down because x subtract 0 is just x. And a positive 2 and a negative 2 is a 0. So there's the answer, negative 2x squared. We don't put the 0 in. Number 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's already in descending order. Again, I repeat, you might, if you did add it on the opposite here and did the horizontal method and went and grouped them and add them, perfect. But we're practicing the vertical method. If you did it both ways and got it right, then you know what you're doing. So we're subtracting. We got an x cubed, so that goes underneath there. We got an x, so it goes underneath there. And we have a minus 2. So when I group these, I put the like terms below each other, draw a line, and I'm subtracting. So subtracting means what? Make that plus a minus. That's a plus, so it's a minus 5. Make that plus a minus, so that's gone, and that's gone. Make the minus a plus, so that's a plus. So the positive becomes a negative, the positive becomes a negative, and the negative becomes a positive. Now you got 11x to the 4, and you got a negative 1, negative 5 is negative 6. You got a 6 is not changed, 6x squared. 8 subtract 4 is 4. And a negative 7 plus 2 is a negative 5. Done. Now, simplify by the horizontal method and the vertical method. Just reviewing. The horizontal method, you would write that one down and add on the opposite. So that would make that a negative 7x plus 11. We group the like terms. Done. X's go on the left, constants go on the right. Don't change the signs. 4 subtract 7 is negative 3. Remember, that's plus a negative, that's plus a negative. And that's a negative 6, so that's a plus negative. So subtract, if you had negative 6 plus 11, that just gives you a plus 5. So the plus and negative is for you if you want, but try to get used to do it without it. We're doing this by the vertical method, so subtracting, we change the sign. So that plus there becomes a minus. And that minus becomes a plus. So that's gone and that's gone. So now 7 subtract, or 4, and a negative 7 is a negative 3. And a negative 6 plus 11 is a plus 5. So this is the horizontal method. That's the vertical method. When you do the vertical, you change the sign and you put it in a circle. I forgot to put it in a circle. Why I put it in a circle? It reminds me that I changed my sign because I'm subtracting. Just a little habit that I did ever since I was in grade 9. And this is many, many years later, and I still do the same thing because I'm trying to be consistent. Consistency is the thing about working out the math. Practice. Work out these by the vertical method. Arrange in descending order. Subtract that from that. Well, we got to go, before we start, we should do the descending order. So if I put these in descending order before I start, then it makes the problem easier. Subtract that from that. That's like saying subtract 8 from 10. So that's 10 minus 8. So that means I have to do x plus 3 and put 4x minus 7 like that. So subtract that from that. So this goes first, that goes second, or that goes on top, that goes on the bottom. So I'm subtracting, so that makes that a negative 4, and that makes that a plus 7. And that's gone. So 1 add on negative 4 is negative 3x, and positive 3, positive 7 is a positive 10. And it says, this trinomial, subtract that trinomial. Good, but before we start, let's do descending order. And the descending order is a square, then the x, and then a 10. 2, 1, 0. 2, 1, 0. That's x to the 0 there. Now, it says, this trinomial, subtract this one. So I could have put that in brackets and said, oh, well, that makes more sense now. Let's subtract all this from this. That's okay. This was meant. So I got to subtract these by the vertical method. So let's write down, it's just that, subtract that. So if I wrote down, say, 14, subtract 11, well, that would be easy. That's just a 3. So as you see it, but notice up here, subtract this binomial from this one. So this one goes on the top, that one goes on the bottom. So here I have that trinomial, subtract that one. So I'll put this one on the top, and I'll put this one on the bottom. And make sure that the like terms are all lined up. And notice I'm subtracting. So it's this one, subtract this one. So the subtraction is there. Draw a line. And because I'm subtracting, this plus becomes a minus. This minus becomes a plus. This minus becomes a plus. So when I do that, scratch those out, and I'm dealing with negative 9, negative 1, negative 10, x squared, negative 3 plus 1, that's a 1, that's a minus 2, and a plus 2 plus 10 is a plus 12. So when you're subtracting, you're still adding on the opposite, but it's in the vertical method. And number 3, so if I want to put that bracket around that, less that makes more sense, putting the brackets around it. So it's this trinomial less this. So that's the same as the subtract. Less means subtract. And I have to have descending order, so that's okay. But notice I got an x cubed and no x squared. And over here I got an x squared, x cubed. So if you line them up and fill in the missing term, it makes everything much better. So if you put the 0x squared in here, and over here you got a cube, and then a square, and you got no x, and you have a 1. So putting the 0x in lines it up. Putting the 0x squared in lines it up. And now I have to go this one, subtract this one. So this x cubed is on the top, or this one is on the top, and that one is on the bottom. And now notice, because I filled it in, what happens? It's much easier to keep track of. Filling it in with the zeros, you keep track of it. You hopefully don't make an error. And we're subtracting. Less means subtract. We're not adding. And we're subtracting, so therefore that's a plus, we make it a minus. That's a minus, we make it a plus. That's a plus. Oh, that's a 0, so there ain't any difference. So you don't make a negative 0. 0 is neither negative nor positive. That's a plus, we make it a minus. So that plus is gone, that minus is gone, that plus is gone. So that's a 1, subtract 2, so it's a negative 1. There's the 1 right there. And a 0, add on 9, so it's, and a negative 6 and 0 is just negative 6x. Negative 4, negative 1, negative 5. So that's the video on the subtracting by the vertical method. Again, whatever way you want to do it. Whatever way. But this is true for when you're subtracting 2. If you had more subtractions to do, for instance, just put this in extra. Let's say you're at x, 4x minus 3, subtract 2x plus 7, subtract 8x minus 4. It's better to do this by the horizontal method. Better, because the vertical method for subtraction is normally done with 2, not with 3. So I would go change that sign and that sign, and I change that to negative 8, and I change that to plus 4. Now I would group my like terms. So the horizontal method is the method used in higher math. The vertical method is just done to give you another way to think. And you add these up, you get negative 6x, and you get negative 6. I made them up and didn't know 2 of these might be negative 6. But here, I would do the horizontal method by adding on the opposites to these 2 and grouping like terms. That ends the video on the vertical method of subtracting. And if you like my video, click the like button. If you're not a subscriber, if you wish to be a subscriber to my channel, do so. And if you want to click the notification bell, because there are more videos coming your way. And write a comment on this video if you wish. And you visit my math website at mathfullyexplained.com. And you get information about 3 sections: me, videos, and content. In the me, you have my degrees and teaching experience. The video section talks about the strategies you're going to use in teaching the math to help you make the learning easier. And the content has the units that I'm doing, and the number of videos on each of those units. The black font has the videos already online, and the red font will be the videos that I'll be doing in the near future. So it's important to click this notification bell, because once they come online, you'll get a notification to say, oh, I need to do factoring, I need to do quadratics. So that's what happens. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.